SFJ 4x4 Studios presents
in my oversized four-wheel drive Jeep.
a Jeep podcast starring industry experts.
Pure monosity.
What? Say that again.
With mad scientist Scott Brown,
Use my drill press as a sort of lathe.
our host Neil Simpson,
If one light goes out, they all go out.
filled with shenanigans.
We are really professional with Jeeps.
This is I Speak Jeep.
Love it. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever, however you are joining us. This is the I Speak Jeep podcast presented by SFJ4x4.com.
Are you sure?
I'm very sure. Look at Scott and I. If you're watching us
Twinsies.
live, we're twinsies,
Yep.
twinning.
Yeah. You see the orange has fled the area.
Yeah. Spooky season has left.
I'm waiting for my holiday one.
We have a secret release holiday one that is should reasonably be making the social platform rounds, direct emails, that kind of stuff.
See, I'd be
next
all
week.
about it if it had like a
Oh.
turkey on it.
Scott, your wife Amy has joined us
She's
as the
on
first
point.
person today.
She's got
Good
first.
morning, Amy.
She's got first.
Firsties.
So so we'll actually be. It will not have a turkey on it. It was meant to be a seasonal hoodie.
See, I didn't get a pumpkin. You don't get a turkey.
It is Scott's birthday.
That's
is.
why she's
I
on first.
Oh, I'm a terrible friend. I am a terrible friend.
You are, because I even said happy birthday right before we got started.
Nope. I am a terrible friend.
I'm
Here's
used to it.
I'm so. Here's
Wow, how's that make you feel?
Oh, I just
He was riding a high this
I was
morning, and
riding
then you
high.
just kicked him right.
took me down a couple notches. Took me down a couple notches. Here's the problem, and
We're
I
going
am not.
110 miles an
I'm
hour.
going 110, and the challenge
And just
is
running Scott over in the process.
It
Oh,
Don't worry, it's not your birthday.
Oh,
Speed bump.
God, I'm just not good with birthdays. Like, of all the things that I really love as a purveyor of humans, I'm just not good with birthdays.
I always love
Honestly, I'm with you. I'm terrible at it.
I just love for
If
his
it wasn't
birthday.
for Facebook, I'd never
I
remember.
always just am quiet. Just let the day go on, and then at lunchtime I'll go out and get food, come back and just hand it to him and I'll look at him.
It's wonderful. But I'm also not that hyped up on my birthday. Like,
Especially the next one, right?
I don't care. You know what I mean?
I think he cares like this much.
I care this much because and as most people may or may not know, I mean, what a tremendously unrealistic goal as a college student. You're sitting there doodling. I was like, I want to hand build my house by 35.
Yeah.
Right. And obviously I
We're
didn't.
close.
I didn't hand build my house by 35. 'cause
What's
of course-
5 years?
What's 5 years, right? And but I built an incredibly amazing company with the best humans, serving
Let's be
the best
realistic.
humans.
This is your house.
This is my house, right?
Yeah.
And Scott used to say, "This is my project. This is my Jeep." Well, dude, this
Yeah.
is my dream, right? I was at the bank the other day, and this very nice individual, and she was like, "Oh, it's Friday. We're so excited. We're gonna be off. Blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm okay. It's like whatever."
Yeah.
And she's like, "Really?" She's like, "Well, thank goodness it's not Monday." I was like, "No." I love Mondays.
Yeah.
I love Mondays.
Yeah.
I get in. I like to be back at work. And she's like, seriously? I was like, I like the people. I like what we do. I like the reach, the whole shooting match. So
Yeah.
All
I
right,
used
well,
that phrase over the weekend, the shooting match.
Yeah.
And that confused an individual.
Well, that happens.
They never heard that before. The whole shooting
It's
match.
a neologism.
Is it?
No,
Pasturance.
I'm still saying it's a
It's like
neologism.
pasturance.
that's a neologism.
Weird. My
Bri-
name is Neil with SFJ4x4.com.
And
Good
he's
morning,
sure of
Brian. Yes, I am sure of it. Who are you, sir?
I am Mad Scientist Scott Brown, and today I was researcher guy.
You were. You did a great job for us. Thank you. I'm sure. Well, I don't know. Actually, I
Well,
don't know
let's see
because
the
I went
sheet.
to ask for it and you slapped my hand.
Closed it right in the cookie jar.
Closed it in there.
And I'm Jeff Shermani, the producer.
The Italian stallion
Yep.
representing. And we had as individuals and both personal and professional individuals who are equally going many miles per hour these days. Everybody seemed to have a good weekend, a big weekend.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. So where are we at on that? Well, you know what? Wait a second. Before we get to that, folks, you're going to want to hold in there for this conversation because we're going to be chronicling a little bit of aftermarket history. Obviously, we just went to SEMA a week or so ago.
Yep.
Scott and I have been in the industry for a really long time,
Yep.
by comparison to most other human beings who are into the 4x4 and off-road
Yeah, when
industry.
we're
Davey
flipping.
is sitting off camera.
He's waiting.
teasing
He's
us
waiting.
with-
He's waiting.
No,
he's letting
he's
me.
eating the cookies, teasing us with them.
I saw him
We're-
immediately eyeing those cookies.
Hold on, folks. You're going to want to hold in there because we're going to be talking about the business of big business.
Yep.
And it was inspired by a friend of ours, and we'll be talking about that. You're going to want to stay on site for that today because, quite frankly, the off-road aftermarket industry is shifting, and we're going to tell you about that.
Yep.
So, real quick in the comments, Brad is saying, "Happy Monday, fellas. Just back from the Virginia Beach Jeep Fest over the weekend, and he repped the very sweatshirt that you are currently wearing."
Awesome. Thank you, Brad.
Chip saying, "Morning, guys. Back to work. I'll catch up on the pod after work. Keep on."
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to
morning,
all
Chip.
of you. And if you are listening at home, Davey has made his singular sneaky,
Yes. He
sneak
ran
on
off
screen.
Ran off stage.
And what he was doing for us, because we have between podcasts this morning, we did have one of our reps come in. We are an authorized reseller of Schaefer Specialized Lubricants,
Yep.
which is this super high quality motor oil, gear oil, good quality USA company.
Yep.
Really cool history themselves. And our rep is the best. He brought us cookies.
Always brings us cookies.
Always brought us cookies. So Davey just brought those on.
And
on
he's
site
really
for us.
high energy. And then it was real funny. He came in and he was all excited as normal. And then he had like 14 trips because he is distracted. And he was bringing stuff in, and he saw the sheet that said live streaming process, and I literally watched him like, ooh.
Because
When he first came in, I could hear him while we were
Oh,
recording
yeah,
the
I
other.
know.
You
I
can
was
hear
like,
him recording
like,
the other one.
How
And
can I politely say, let's bring it down?
And he did. I was impressed.
I was instantly.
I didn't know that he could do that.
I didn't know either. I have never heard him that quiet.
I love it. I said something to him. He was like, "This is the quietest
I get.
I've ever been. That's as quiet as I get." We're like, "All right, we'll take it, man.
Yeah.
We'll take it." All right, back to how was your weekends?
It was good.
You did Rubicon things,
Well,
Rubicon JT things.
I just drove the wheels off of it. It's kind of funny. It had 18,900 or 800 miles or something like that. Now it's 350 or something like that. So I just
You didn't shut it off.
didn't
this
shut it
weekend.
off.
And you were just local.
Yep, didn't go really anything too crazy. We did one of the important things. I had a bunch of just logistics, selling Oscar. I had to go get titles and go transfer things and that kind of stuff. So went to the bank, got that handled. Me and my wife took Oscar on Friday out to Chip, the new owner, and hand delivered. And he gave us a grill, to which we're going to bring my grill to the shop, I believe. So we're going to have in-house grilling. So that'll be exciting. And
We're not opening up a
No.
food business. We're just
No.
we're
You
just
don't-
hoping to
you don't
throw a
want us
couple
to.
hot dogs.
Maybe in the future. We're
Oh,
gonna.
jeez.
I was going to say, actually, Jeffrey and I have plans, but we're
it.
not going to cook here in the shop, folks. That's,
we are too much of a foodie to do that at this moment.
yes,
Yeah,
We have
yes,
to
yes,
rein
yes,
ourselves in.
yes. We're just going to make some hot dogs. I'm hoping that we
Air
can
quotes.
maybe throw some hot dogs together for the parade
Yeah.
coming up in the near future. So
That kind of stuff.
Good morning, Daddy Jeep.
yes.
So that was exciting. Was able to spend some time with the kids and that kind of stuff. Just kind of relax. Surprisingly, I didn't get much done on the 36, but I thought I would enthrall you with some fun things that's the mad scientist learned about his own car that
Oh,
he's owned
boy.
for 3 years.
Yeah, of course.
So
The gift that keeps on
it
giving.
is. It just keeps swinging for the tender parts. So anyway,
It keeps swinging for his tender parts.
I
He's still learning.
I bought at least over a year and a half ago the factory original radio for the car, and I was really excited. And I thought I got a good deal on it
Why? God
because I'm
bless it.
Scott.
That's such garbage technology.
Well, I didn't have any plans of using any of the technology.
I know
used it
you
for
wanted
looks.
to gut it. And,
So-
yeah, okay.
I'm working through the dash, and the dash is in the car. It's all pretty, and I was all excited because now these parts that have been just in boxes for
Lingering.
way too long, and I've lost things, and you imagine. Anyway, I can finally clean them up and do that. And it happens with the projects here too. You make it so nice, then you realize like crap. I have to restore everything else to the level of what I just made nice.
Yes, I made all this nice, and now this looks like hot
crap.
garbage.
Yes. So went ahead and I restored the rest of the gauges, got those in. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get to the radio head. For those that don't know, it's actually separate. It has cables that go down to it, almost like a speedometer cable. The knobs are on a dash, but everything is in
They
the
would have
box.
actually had tubes at that time, right?
It had tubes.
It was a tube.
Had.
It was a, yeah. Yeah, we talked about this previously.
Yeah,
that
so
you were gonna gut
I was
it.
really excited. I took it all apart. I gutted it. I sandblasted the case. I painted it, period correct, textured finish. I was really excited about that. And finally, I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out where this goes. And this whole time, Scott believed this box was going in the center of the firewall.
Mm.
To the point that I even put it up there, and I was like, wait a minute, it's wider than the hump that is on there.
Boy.
And the bolts don't have anywhere to go.
Oh,
So thankfully, I have the 1935, 1936 Ford Bible.
of course. Thankfully, we all should
that
have that.
someone that's probably passed on at this point made in the 70s. And I go back and I find out the radio and explain the difference. Of course, for those that don't know, 35 is a different radio than 36.
Ford. That's just nothing is more Ford. They retool every time. They still do that.
But the Ford was worried that you were going to put it in the wrong spot, like in the middle of the firewall, and try to make it work. So they dimpled the firewall for locations. And there's a 35 spot and a 36 spot, because the 36 spot the radio is actually smaller. New technology. Anyway,
Fancy.
so I'm looking all over the firewall. Mind you, I've sanded, I've body worked this firewall, I've painted it. Never saw these dimples before in my life. It's completely new to me. And they are on the driver's side above the steering column. And it has the box has this angle. And I just thought, oh, that's just to make it look nice underneath the dash. No, that angle so it doesn't run into the steering column.
Huh.
Because the box is mounted at a 45-degree angle on the slope of the firewall. You know who put this really nice fuse box and starter relay in his car right above the steering column?
Whoops.
That really made a lot of sense to pass Scott. Drilled holes, mounted things.
Mm-hmm.
Know where that radio box wants to go?
Right there.
Right there. Yeah, how big that battery box is, or that radio box is when you go to put that up in there. It's huge.
So you got to rework some fuses?
No, I think the box is going to get modified because it's literally just an empty can at this point for me to stash a newer Bluetooth radio in and that kind of stuff. So I think it's just going to get sectioned and chopped and shrinkage.
Mad scientist things.
Mad scientist things. But I wasn't quite prepared for that over
You
the
weren't
weekend.
mentally prepared.
No.
You had already done the finish work on it, as far as you were
It's
concerned.
finished paint, people.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to sandblast it again.
You were concerned it was finished, you know?
As far as I was concerned, it was finished. Like literally, I was even thinking about putting gauges in the front of it because it's going to be in the center of the dash down there.
Yeah.
No, that's not going to happen. So I got
Oh,
to figure
my
that out,
goodness.
and that's the gift that keeps on giving. But I also worked on my JT a little bit over the weekend. Just me doing me, and Greg does the same thing. But we don't like the way people run wiring.
Mm-hmm.
It has aftermarket headlights in it, and they did an okay job. They did above average job, but I want to open the hood and be able to take the air box apart without moving wires,
Sure.
that kind of stuff. I also, if it sits still for 5 minutes, it's going to get fluid film so it doesn't rust away. So took the air box out, rerouted the wires, cleaned it all up, made it so that the fuse add-on goes in the proper way into the fuse box.
Mm-hmm.
And then my things Scott learned. As a teenager, I used to put tire shine on my Gremlin all the time, and it looked really nice and fly. And
We all did.
And Greg has a big affinity against tire shine.
It's part of his religion.
Yes.
Yes.
I think I am now partaking of that because I actually wore them on purpose. I have ruined 5 pairs of pants. I've owned this Jeep since last Saturday.
No.
I keep cuddling with my tires and without realizing. And the tires look great, but I got to tell you, I had a really nice pair of pants I barely ever wore.
Yes.
I wore to go see Chip. Loading the grill, I somehow ruined the front of the pants.
No.
And we went to go to lunch after that, and I was like, I looked like I rolled around in a diesel truck's engine bay.
No, you did not.
It's terrible. And I washed them hoping it would come out. No. I think
Really?
they're work jeans now.
Now they're
dish
work
soap.
jeans.
I'm
And
going to
now
try
they're
that.
work jeans.
So I was literally looking up on YouTube yesterday afternoon, how do I remove tire shine because this is
from your pants.
this is bad.
But the problem is, and for folks listening at home, it's not just tire shine
Yeah.
because what it's doing is it's pulling the natural oils out of the rubber itself.
yes,
So no longer is it just like if I just took tire shine and spritzed it on your pants.
yeah,
Well, that would not be good.
no,
Now we're mixing it with a petro-based
yes,
product. And folks, I mean, if you're listening at home, I mean, I was just having this conversation with an old hot rodder last week. We were talking about rubber, literally just pre-COVID,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I'm not a big purveyor of rubber even 10 years ago,
Yep.
but even just pre-COVID, you could get 7-10 years out of rubber.
Yep.
If you go back 20-30 years,
Yep.
that rubber can still probably inflate right
Yes.
now. You know, I
It would
start to feel
slowly
like
get harder.
it would
over
slowly
time.
get harder over time,
Yeah.
but it would probably still inflate and hold air for just at least some rolling around.
Let's put it in context. I literally was talking to I have a bicycle buddy. He used to be a Jeep guy. He got out of Jeeps, even though I harass him all the time about it. I have the childhood bike of my mom's. I have the receipt for it. It was sold in 1955
Yes.
by a local bicycle shop in Ashtabula. The original tires are on this bicycle. My son rode it, not this year, but last year, on the original tires and the original tubes.
Yes.
At least as old as I am, the tubes are. Those are still pliable working tires. Do they look like 1955 tires? Yes. They're not brand new by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But they're
chal-
past the 5 years old.
Yeah, they're past. At this point in time, COVID tires, I'm just
Yes.
going to start calling things COVID tires,
Yes.
are dry rotting within
Ever.
3 years.
Yeah, quickly. Very
3
quickly.
years. I mean, even if you're not using tire shine on them,
That accelerates it, though.
that accelerates it.
Yeah.
But the oils are leaching out of these things from the moment that they're in
I'm
production.
literally at the point, like, I think I'm going to message the salesman and be like, listen, I got 5 ruined pair of pants. Can maybe talk to your detail guy and get him to quit with
You think it
tire
was the
shine.
detailer? You don't think it was?
100%.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah.
Whatever.
Like all the tires
It
gotta
was-
look wet and pretty.
It
on the
was
block.
so
I
fresh
guess.
that on the trip on the freeway to go see Chip, when the tires got warm, it literally threw it on the side of the truck.
That is
Oh.
thick.
Wow.
That is thick.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey, what do you had going on this weekend?
So I was working with the Heberly's Heartstring organization to get that going. We had our first official organizational meeting to establish who's on the board, what direction we're headed, and start planning for the event in April for the open mic competition. A lot of great things were laid out. We officially have our own website, HeberlyHeartstrings.org.
And a little fun logo.
I saw that.
The
A
fun
little logo. I
well,
like.
so that is actually going to be our mascot. We actually have a separate official
Oh.
business logo.
So
Okay.
what's the backstory on the mascot? I know there's got to be one.
Honestly, it was so my mom was doing all the creative design work and graphic work. So she brought a portfolio of different logo designs
Oh boy.
for us to look through and vote on as a group.
Right.
And as part of doing that, she was playing with AI a little bit, and she threw the AI algorithms, whatever she did with it,
Sure.
and this fun little fox wearing a snow coat, holding a guitar, popped up, and I was like, "That's our mascot. I don't care. I'm
That's
already
funny.
just as a side project at this point. I'm already looking into how we're going to make this into a stuffed animal
Of course.
because it is just awesome."
Yeah.
How fun.
So that part's fun. As far as planning and everything, we actually did our meeting at Voodoo Brewing in Erie,
Mm-hmm.
and that's actually our venue for this first event in April, as an organization, and it's going to be just overall a fun place to be. I'm really
Sure.
excited about it. We're
Do
really
you have the
jazzed
date
up.
in April yet?
April 19th.
April. Oh, that's my birthday.
It's-
We were just talking about birthdays.
Yeah, so
I know
April-
my own. I mean,
Are you sure?
Well,
April 19th, 6 p.m. Till
is that a weekend or something?
It's a Friday night.
Hey, look at that. Woo,
So-
crazy.
What's really fun is we're working with the establishment. The plan is that the side street in Erie is going to be closed. So you're going to this is on State Street, right downtown in the heart of Erie,
Okay.
and 8th Street is the corner street there.
Mhm.
They're going to close that off, and we're putting the stage outside.
Nice.
awesome.
Weather pending, obviously.
Yeah, I was
but-
gonna say April in Erie is touch and go. I suppose.
Yeah, so it's really looking like it's going to be a block party style, a lot of fun. a lot is going into it. Obviously, organizing it, getting instruments collected for the library end of it. Overall, it's just throwing dice and just keep going with it.
Yeah, that's
The,
awesome.
Awesome.
The best part too is, and I'm going to be anxiety riddled for the next 2 to 4 weeks, however long it takes for the federal government to reply. But last night, I submitted our application for 501c3 status.
Cool.
So,
Excellent. Congratulations on all of that moving forward. Are you going to be doing instrument donations at the event? Like, is it going to be part of the marketing, if you will? Or?
So if anyone does want to donate instruments at the event, that's absolutely available. But we're not going to market the event in that way. The event is specifically giving back to the musicians in the community.
Okay.
So it's free to attend. You don't have to buy tickets. If you want to purchase tickets, we're giving it's $5 ticket. You get an additional door prize ticket when you come in.
That's a good idea.
But it's not mandatory. You can
Sure.
show up and just walk right in.
Yeah.
There will be security at the door checking you in, making sure that weapons aren't coming in. We'll have security roaming the premise because we are handing out a lot of cash. Top prize is $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Second place is $750. Third is $500. I mean, we're giving out a lot of cash. We're 5 places plus a most passionate prize. It's just an incredible way to give back to musicians and to compete. You just have to pre-register during a time frame which we're going to release here soon. You register during that time. If we want to have 30 contestants, if we exceed that number, we will do audition style where we'll eliminate some.
Right.
But 30 is how many are going to compete that night.
Cool.
That's awesome.
And all of this, just for folks listening at home, is to honor the works and presence of a relative, Jason, in the process. So
Yeah.
a little memoriam for him,
And-
which is a super cool process for you guys.
And also, it's important to my aunt and uncle, his parents, are that the event is also raising awareness of prescription medication, making sure that you're aware of what medications you're on and what medications may interact with each other. Because ultimately, that is how Jason lost his life, was due to a prescription medication that he shouldn't have been on.
Yep, absolutely. So you're going to want to definitely, tune in and follow along for that as well, folks. A comment came in. Apparently today is also Rob Morgan's birthday. So we got a couple birthday boys in the house.
So fun thing, I know so many people with the same birthday as me is not funny.
Huh.
I don't know if that's a normal thing, or not, but growing up, my next door neighbor that I bothered all the time, like Dennis Mess, his birthday was the same day as me.
Oh, go figure.
Our friend Walt.
Okay, go back 9 months. This is always my thing. Go back 9 months and figure out what was going on. All right. Anyways, my own weekend, I'll keep it short and sweet because I really want to get into the business of big business. Obviously, I got to do some nominal Jeep things. I did work on the house. There's, all of that stuff is, appropriate and moving forward in my life. But realistically, I think my big highlight of the weekend was twofold. One, my 10-year-old has been, quote unquote, picking up hours here at the shop, which is very fun. So he did that both Friday night and then a little bit on Sunday, just kind of nominally helping with some of our cleanup activities, which is fun. And he had a weekend away.
Amy just said 9 months from Valentine's Day.
There you go. That's what I thought. And then I baked a cake. Baked a unicorn cake with my daughter.
As you should.
And that's really all I cared about over the weekend.
Was it the confetti style cake?
No, it was just straight. My wife and her made the. It was just a straight like vanilla or yellow cake or something. You know what I
But
mean?
then
Just something they
decorated
had.
it, frosted
But
it.
then we did the frosting and did all the decorating so quite frankly, all the big Jeeps I build in life, the house, the business, all that kind of stuff, all of that is second fiddle to the time that I get to spend with my my family.
As
and
it should
whatnot.
be.
So, yeah, no doubt.
Yep.
So 9 months from Valentine's Day, if you were wondering, folks, what makes November so special?
Yep.
Gets awfully cold north of the Mason-Dixon in February.
Yep.
All right, big business. What this is reasonably inspired by, obviously we were out at SEMA last week, and there is definitely an indication, a shift that has happened in our industry since 2007. So we're pushing roughly 15 years, 16 years.
Yep.
And what has happened since 2007, specifically for our listeners. Congratulations, you're on the flagship moving forward. But the off-road industry, which was previously considered kind of second fiddle to the automotive industry as a whole.
And it's really important to note also what happened in 2007 is the JK was released. So finally you could get a Wrangler with a back door. I used to hear all the time, oh, I would love a Wrangler, but I have kids.
100%.
Or I haul X, Y, and Z, and I can't do that kind of stuff. And at the time, I was a teenager. I didn't need a back door. And I was like, well, this is just fine for me and my, dating early life. But then you grow up and you have a wife and kids, and you realize really quickly you need a back door.
Yes. And I think that's what I was leading up to say that as Jeep owners, realistically, we did not have, the Bronco. So if you're into the 4x off-road industry, there was not a Bronco option.
Yep.
Toyota owners, I'm sorry, but your Toyota wasn't any cooler than it was, than the TJ Wrangler platform. They were nice, utilitarian, slightly upchurched from what they used to be in the 80s and 90s.
I did know some guys that switched over to like a 4Runner because of the backdoor situation and that kind of stuff.
Right. But ultimately, the Toyotas weren't lighting the world on fire at that time either, right? I mean, that's just kind of the reality as we kind of came out of the 80s and 90s and 2000s. The off-road industry was largely...
It was almost like a hobbyist.
It was a hobbyist. It was very utilitarian.
Yep.
There were businesses, and we're going to talk about those businesses today a little bit, who were active players or participants. It's actually going to talk a little bit about our geography in what I like to call the breadbasket of the breadbasket or the heartland, depending on how you look at it.
Yep.
Both stolen from the Midwest and Ohio mantras over the years.
Yep.
But our geography, our location to it. But ultimately, the JK Wrangler comes out in 2007.
Yep.
It's a hot piece of garbage.
Yes. Surprise.
And the thing is, that's just the reality of the situation. So if you've got an 07, sorry, not sorry, but it just was not it was not, the components themselves were not fully developed.
Yes.
Yet.
We have to have a trial year. Every year, and we had a nice thing going for a while.
It was sevens.
Just you bought a 7. You just knew you were gonna be into some.
You were the
some
beta.
Stuff.
You were the beta tester. Right?
Your 97 TJ has YJ parts on it. Spoiler alert.
Yes.
Your 07 JK has TJ parts on it.
Yep.
Even though it's all new.
Yep. They were just kind of doing what they knew at the time. Now things were redeveloped to a degree.
I mean, it was the concept
as a
break
whole.
in the mold.
Correct. It was the biggest break in the mold they had experienced, because obviously we then get to a wider body, a completely different body style than we had seen.
Yep. Heavier.
The windshield was sloped back. It was more aerodynamic than before. The grille structure, so on and so forth. There was a bunch of little things like that.
Yeah, they really did sharpen their pencil, and they tried really hard. But like anything, we actually talked about this a couple podcasts ago with aftermarket parts, they cannot beta test nowhere near as much as they need to. And this is an example of how the OEs, even though they have tons of money, tons of time, to use 10 years of development, they still get slapped by the testing
Constantly.
that you and I do every single day on our Jeeps.
Yes.
We will find the little crack and
the little weak link.
Yes.
And we will accentuate it. So ultimately, I argue that the Jeep JK accelerated. It was the particle accelerator of our off-road and 4x4 industry.
Because suddenly Joe Average bought a Jeep, and they looked to the older Jeeps to what do I do with it? And immediately I'll have to modify it.
Yes.
I don't see a stock Jeep forever.
And additionally, what I'll argue or add to the conversation is the fact that first roughly 4 to 5 years, so 7 to 11, there were not drastic improvements in the actual manufacturing. So the front axles were weak.
Yep.
You could get a Jeep for a while there that had a 35 in the rear.
1 year.
That
Until they realized their mistake.
Yep, the 3.8 engine was lacking the oomph that Jeep
Yeah.
owners expect out of their vehicle.
Yep.
The transmissions. There's a whole bunch of things, right?
Yep.
And so we required, not only were we promised this Jeep that will take us to uncharted territories,
Yes.
that American spirit where now we're pioneers again, we can go, off the grid. But then there was weak links in the chain of the actual vehicle itself. So the aftermarket had to step in and contribute.
And not only that, this is a lot of people's were their first Jeep. They have dreamt about it for their entire life. They're not mechanics. A lot of TJ, YJ guys, CJ guys, they were shade tree mechanics. They
Yes.
were going to push it into a shape of a Jeep and make it function. They may not know the best way to do it or the best way to wire it, but they were going to make it work. And we saw that across all the farmland of the country,
Yes.
where there was some old Jeep that you whapped with a hammer and cussed at it a little bit and made it function.
Which is why everybody has a Jeep story,
Yes.
right? We've said that before, whether it was somebody in your family or a neighbor down the road, everybody had a Jeep story. And it's this great, larger than life. It would never get stuck in the snow.
Yep.
It could climb, a boulder. It could leap a skyscraper, whatever their Jeep story is. And then the argument is the TJ, when they went to the TJ, had more creature comforts than a Jeep
Yeah.
had ever
and
had
it
before.
started this shift of people, Joe average. Like I remember being early in my college career, and I met a guy that was intern the same place I was, and his dad had real excited, and he went and bought a Rubicon.
Sure.
Had no idea what to do with it.
Nope.
He put 20-inch wheels on it and got rid of those noisy mud tires, but he had no idea what the lockers were for and that kind of stuff. And I remember being a young person driving my Sport going, what?
Right. Right.
But that started that trend of, it was more of a status symbol of something I could remember. And that person didn't have a toolbox in their garage for the most part. They were working on it in their driveway, simple things. So suddenly our aftermarket had to step up and make things bolt-on friendly.
Yes, it was the first time, arguably the first time where we literally saw a trend away from the rugged DIY market.
Yep.
And kind of these rudimentary squared off shapes.
I mean, literally in the instructions, used to say some modifications may be necessary.
Oh, cutting, grinding, welding was
it
the
was just a
biggest thing.
And if you couldn't do it, your buddy could, or that kind of
100%.
stuff.
So-
Things happen.
Just into the comments real quick. Charles is saying good morning from Texas, and then Joe's asking, who is this Joe Average guy?
Bum, bum, bum. We're going to have to come up with another name for that one.
Yeah.
So as far as now we're into this JK platform, the industry is moving in such a way. I mean, I know a couple people who were attracted to the platform, because obviously we had all the jokes about them being minivans, school buses, limousines,
And
whatever
this-
you want to call
This
them.
hazing has happened every
Totally.
every one time they've changed anything. CJ guys hated square headlights. Square headlight guys hated round headlights.
Oh, leaf springs
Leaf
are.
springs
You didn't need coil springs.
coil
The leafs
springs
are
are
perfectly
evil.
fine. They've been around for
Yeah.
70 years.
And then they all hated on the back door for still.
yes.
I hear it all the time.
Yep.
And they put a minivan engine in. It didn't help things.
No, they literally took a minivan engine and put it
Yeah.
in there. So all of these things happen, right?
Yes.
And all of a sudden, now the industry is shifting and going, hey, there's a whole new breed of person who's attracted to this vehicle.
Yep.
They're taking it and doing things with it that are, because I think the marketing is always, as a piece from an ownership level, the marketing is misleading.
Yeah.
Because I think what's very challenging is that oftentimes the vehicle is far more capable than the driver.
Yes.
And people see the marketing and they go, I'm going to do that, even though they have absolutely no experience
And they're scared to death.
and they go out and they flog on the vehicle because, picking
Yeah.
the line and, doing, kind of that, I don't know, the stepping stones that get you into it.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, the vehicles were so far more capable than
They
the
got
drivers.
themselves in trouble.
They got themselves in trouble.
Yeah.
Things started breaking and the aftermarket started responding.
Yep.
Right. So not only did we have to make it bolt on,
Yes.
but now we had to start increasing the volume of production.
Yep.
Because of course, if we go back far enough, we in the aftermarket industry, aftermarket manufacturers were oftentimes onesie twosie shops.
Yes.
Right. And they ultimately were only capable, the volume that they were able to produce was very limited.
Real fast in the comments, Joe said, try driving a Liberty at a Jeep Jamboree. I'm just going to say Joe's the one example where the driver's probably more capable than the vehicle.
Well, and it's important to note, and Joe will be the first person, it's Linda. Linda is the driver, so Linda is more capable than the vehicle. God love you, Joe. But Linda is here for the hardcore stuff.
Yes.
And what was the other one there? I was curious.
Charles is saying around 2007, he'd tell his son to hit the wheel well on the YJ to get the blinkers working while driving.
Classic. No doubt. So now we're into a more refined fit and finish vehicle. It's getting people in trouble more than ever.
I'll add another thing that is just another layer to this onion. Before, back in the dark days of the TJ, you had to go wait by your mailbox, and a catalog would show up.
Yes.
And you would peruse this. I remember getting so excited, and I look at what's a new thing I can bolt on my Jeep. And I would go through this catalog, and then I'd have to wait for the next month for something else to show up. Or it was like 4 times a year. So you just had that cold turkey thing. And then you had to find out, where's my closest 4-wheel drive shop, and how long do I have to drive there for it?
Yes.
And you would make this
pilgrimage.
That word.
Yep.
And
I'm here for you.
You would drive for us, but hour and a half.
So before us, and I'm with you, right? But before us, if we go back to the 60s and 70s.
Put that on a shelf for a second.
Okay.
What really started coming out and more popular with the JK release was now you could go on your computer.
Yes.
And you could click on things, and you had everything at your fingertips.
Yes.
And now you have too many choices.
Yes.
Yes.
Market
Back then,
saturation.
Your catalog had this option, and that's all you had.
Yes.
It could have been a bad option. You had no idea.
You had no idea. It was in the catalog.
It was in the catalog. So that isn't, now we have 3 things. We have a
don't
platform.
worry. If they wanted to sell it, they put stars and pretty colors around it, and suddenly you're like, oh, this has got to be good.
They just put it on their Jeep and had pictures of it.
Yeah.
In our catalogs, it was always red,
Yes.
which I'm sure Neil will love.
Of course.
But, so we had 3 things. We had a platform that was suddenly the most capable Jeep ever.
Yes.
That we could now
attracted a whole new group of people.
Yep. They traded in their minivans and got a Jeep.
Yep.
We had online retailers.
Yes.
Hitting the stage. And, it's just all
We're
this
off to the races. It is a perfect storm of aftermarket
Boom.
explosion.
Yeah.
Now, the challenge with the boom was that, quite frankly, as I had mentioned, most of those manufacturers were small independent manufacturers who were operating, oftentimes as a subsidiary business of a larger parent company.
Yes.
So if I go back, and I was starting to talk about maybe the 70s and 80s specifically, because that's where I feel like, granted, obviously Jeeps and vehicles come out in the 40s. They're basically tractors.
Yep.
Basically, the 40s through the 60s, we have what we call dealer options. And so we can trace the aftermarket industry back to dealer options. There's really not.
Basically, where it started, honestly, was, hey, I have a Jeep. Now I want to plow snow with it.
Yes.
Is the dealer willing to do the plow install and maintenance that plow?
Right.
Or does he have to go to his local fabricator and they're going to take these parts that, and Meyer and those other companies started producing some parts and then said, okay, now it's up to you to mount the pump and figure this all out.
Yeah.
And we're talking back when we had a belt-driven pump on the engine and you had the cables that you had to
100%.
run. It is a whole different ball game compared to what you have now.
And so there were some, obviously the Sears catalog, and if you're listening to us, this might be the first time you hear about
anything.
You could literally buy Jeep parts. Sears catalog of the 40s to the 60s was kind of what I like to consider to be the birth of the aftermarket environment.
You could buy a car. They had an All-State car.
You did.
They had a they had a Vespa rebranded moped.
Yep.
It was literally called an All-State.
Yes.
I mean, you'd buy a house.
Well, you could. But this is where you could buy Jeep aftermarket parts, which were really just kind of these upchurched, rudimentary bumpers and plows and cabs and tops and stuff like that. And right, so we moved past that.
J.C. Whitney.
Yeah, well, so before it was J.C. Whitney, it was Wachowski's, right? So that industry kind of changes in the 70s and 80s and early 90s, and what you end up having is a whole bunch of disjointed small 4x4 shops.
Yes.
Basically, they were separated by kind of community. So
Yes.
each community had a hot rod shop.
Yep.
So you had your cooter, right?
Yes.
So you're that's a reference to Dukes of Hazzard, folks.
Yep.
Get your minds out of the gutter. You had your local mechanic
That just made things work
who just made things work,
by
right?
any means necessary.
You had your local hot rod shop,
Yep.
and they were doing whatever trendy hot rod
He was helping Cooter on the day, but working on his
on
hot
the
rod
hot
at night.
rods at night,
Yep.
right? And then you had your 4x4 shop, and your
Yeah.
4x4 shop was this really kind of, that cousin that you didn't want to associate
Yes.
with a whole ton. And these guys were out flogging on these vehicles in the backwoods, and maybe running through the mud and doing some sand drags.
Yeah.
And
the hot rod guy didn't like him because he's over here trying to polish his car.
Correct.
And this guy's ruining it in his eyes, and he doesn't understand it.
There was a disconnect there.
And they're drafty and cold,
And they roll
leaked
over,
on, and
right?
they rolled over.
The moment you
entering
want to
all
try,
the stuff my dad told me.
yes, all of it. So what ends up happening is that small 4x4 shop and that small hot rod shop start
Yeah.
to disappear at a similar time.
Yes.
As businesses like Wachowski's and then eventually J.C. Whitney and Summit and Jegs, they start to
Which ironically, they all started like the small shops. that
they
disappeared.
did. They did.
They just
And if you want to know how they become accessible, listen to the American Hustle podcast by
That's right.
us.
yeah.
But that is how they then kept rolling their investments and their market approach
Yep.
into their same business model. What then eventually happens is they start gaining more and more market share. At some point in time, Four Wheel Parts exists out of Compton, California.
Yep.
It becomes part of the off-road 4x4 scene.
So I actually have the history.
I know you do.
Just let me know when you're ready.
I will. So then at the same time, these clubs and organizations, as they start to consolidate, you start to get some standout businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Four-wheel drive hardware, Morris 4x4 at the time by the Morris family, OK four-wheel drive. There's a handful. I know I'm missing a couple other. Quadratech comes out in the 90s.
Yep.
So you start having these kind of these conglomerations coming together under these platforms.
Then those all start other offshoot businesses that are either just by association or like, hey, I'm into this, so I'm going to go over here and make diff covers.
100%. So they're helping, right? Because
Yeah.
now it's like, well, hey, here's this catalog, right?
Yes.
And to use your statement, there's your catalog. If I put in the catalog, and the catalog's only 10 pages,
Yep.
and all the Jeep owners who do want to accessorize in the 80s, 90s, and earliest 2000s, they're going to buy the Riddler diff covers or the solid diff covers because those are the only two diff covers available
in the catalog. Yeah.
Because
The rest don't exist.
four-wheel drive hardware is working with the diff cover manufacturer that's 10 minutes away from them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or that they've met on the trail somewhere,
Yes.
and they put it in the catalog and they sell the product. Okay. All of a sudden, the internet has
Yes.
now evened the playing field.
Yes.
And
And points out all the things you're not doing well.
and you're not doing well. And now people are talking about this cover is better for this and that and the other
Yes.
thing. And magazines
Or
had been
this
doing
one's
that.
$20 cheaper than that one, where before that was his market.
It was what it was.
It
You
was
could-
what it was. You'd just be glad you bought a diff cover.
You're
Yeah.
glad you could have a diff cover,
Yep.
And what ends up happening is the business of the big business, because now these retailers start buying up little brands.
Yes.
And we push into the early 2000s, and now there's a market demand. The auto industry isn't demanding it yet. It's
Yeah.
still a little bit. We're not the hot rodders. We're not the pretty paint shops.
Yep.
We're not the restorations. But there is market demand, and the bigger fish start eating up the smaller fish.
Yep.
Some of them are floundering because they are $20 for no particular reason,
Yep.
but they've gotten used to living on that extra $20 a diff cover.
100%.
Um,
And honestly, it's not unlike what we saw in the early years of the automotive industry when we had hundreds of different little marks of car brands,
yes,
and then slowly ones die off or get bought up or put
engineers
together.
start to come over to
And,
here.
and next thing you know, we have three.
yes,
For a while we did have four, and we actually lost them late in the game. But there were hundreds of little car makes back in the 20s.
correct. Correct. So as far as conceptualizing the business of big business, what do we got on the history of four-wheel parts, if you will?
So this was actually really interesting because from my perspective, my local my local off-road shop was in Columbiana, Ohio.
Yep, that was that
part-
hour and a half away. You were
Hour
starting
and a
to
half
reference.
away.
By the time we were starting to go to our
yes.
hot rod shop, we weren't going 15 minutes. We were going an hour and a half.
We are from probably one of the last ones where you have some dyed in the wool. Like I will have some loyalty. I will drive my hour and a half because of the services you kind of things. That's why we made the business here that we did, because that's what we remember. Where a lot of online retailers don't have that kind of scenario. So
No, it's now, dog eat dog on the online commerce.
So all we saw from our perspective is a little shop we knew got bought out, got taken over, and was no longer the store it was. So it was kind of a villain in my story, at least personally. So it was really interesting to go back.
Four-wheel parts, you're saying?
Yeah.
No, 100%. I'm here to say, folks, I'm going to put some people on blast in this podcast. So if you're starting to wear out a little bit in the conversation, I'm going to be talking about some brands that did exist, that didn't exist.
Yeah.
If you watch the
SEMA YouTube.
SEMA YouTube video, you'll see some thinly veiled references to it.
Yep.
I don't know that I'll put them exactly
I don't know that
on
it was
blast.
very thin.
I thought
mean,
it was
it was-
thinly veiled.
it was
but
pretty
we're passionate
obvious
about this subject.
Many people called
I'm
you out on
passionate.
it right away.
I'm amazed how many people said something to me.
So anyway, on to the history. So a man named George Adler in 1961 became the first full-time employee of Trans-American Auto Parts. So he didn't actually start that. He was just there at the inception, which I can relate to.
Sure. That's
So they were selling replacement Jeep parts to small
So we
off-road
should start
shops and
calling
dealerships.
Scott Adler from now on.
Adler.
Jeez. They were located in Los Angeles. He bought the company into the company in 1964 for $5,000 with his father-in-law, which is a good move because at some point, father-in-law is going to pass away.
Yeah.
You get that share he has. But anyway,
listen to you.
right? So he changed the name to Four Wheel Parts
You
Wholesale.
better watch out for like life insurance policies and stuff that Scott's taking out on you.
Scott's got it for me.
I'm too broke with car projects to worry about that stuff.
That's right.
He started catalogs and started supplying parts for Bronco and Chevy Blazer. Obviously, they kind of foobarred that because the Blazer didn't come out until after '64, but that's fine. Scottisms.
I know.
this is
I've read
right
I've read their four-wheel parts history, and I've looked at it, and I'm like, God, you just botched that up because
Yeah.
there's nobody who actually understands vehicles at their
Yes,
level.
100%. So in the 70s, they opened 2 retail stores. Before that, they were pretty much just happy to go to their small mom and pop 4-wheel drive store
Mhm.
and supply parts for them. So basically, you got the catalog or the parts from your little corner store. This is who the corner store got the parts from.
They were the wholesale distributor.
Yes. So now they're going to put some foot in the game, and they're going to have their own retail stores.
Right.
Then in 1982, it went to 5. They opened 5 more. That was Oakland, Gardena, Oxnard, Van Nuys, and they opened a place in Hawaii.
Oh.
Which I was kind of
That's a
surprised.
tax write-off and an opportunity for them to travel out there for
Right.
work.
Work.
Air quotes.
Work. In
When are
19
we opening the SFJ Hawaii location?
right. Right.
in 1988, he created Procomp, producing off-road lighting.
What year?
88.
88. Okay. Interesting.
And this will probably be a precursor to some of this Neil's points later. Under the name Explorer, and he worked with Pete Brown at KC.
Yep.
Because all these companies don't actually, well, they sort of produce things, but they know who they played golf with, and they make lights. So hey, let me sell your lights, but under this other name,
Yes.
precursor. Anyway, so he worked next. They made shocks, and then they made suspension systems.
Yeah.
Air quotes.
Oh,
for
suspension
you.
systems. Oh, my God. Folks, make sure you get a suspension system, not a lift kit.
I gotta tell you, in 1988, it was not a suspension system. It was a
No, it
lift kit.
wasn't. It was a lift kit.
Yes. So in 19-
Whoever's writing that, whoever wrote their history just got into the off-road
yeah,
industry.
they still have
like,
pimples.
5 years ago. God bless them.
So and then I love how we go from like 88 to 98.
Yeah.
Where 10 years are lost.
Yeah. That's because they're not
Anyway.
making any moves at
Yeah.
that point.
You know,
they're
they're
just
just holding-
grinding away.
Yeah, it was just fine. In 98, they opened the store in Orlando, and they created Pro Comp tires. And this is what I thought was an interesting thing. This is something we talk about in internally all the time about buy-ins. He had to buy 36,000 tires to have the Pro Comp tires made.
Yes.
And even at the size of this company, at this point, we're talking about 8 stores.
Yes.
That's pretty good size for, at the time. He was a big dog. That was a lot of cash.
It was a lot of cash out.
So, gotta give it to George. He was a gambler.
He was. It was a tough cat.
So that actually took off. And I remember being in the 4-wheel drive shop and seeing Pro Comp tires kind of hit the scene.
Yeah.
And then immediately after that was wheels, because the tires actually sold and they sold well. So he reinvested and went into wheels. And then this is kind of what Neil was already talking about. George retired in 2005, selling to a private equity group, but they won't tell you who.
Sure.
And 2006, they acquired 4-wheel drive hardware, which we watched happen.
Yes.
Me and Neil.
We lived through that.
Yep. So that in a nutshell, it was kind of interesting to see, like, they totally started the way our local shop started as well. And I guarantee you at this point that, George was selling parts to Joe Kennedy, and that's where that relationship came from.
Yeah. So, and Scott's referencing our local shop and Joe Kennedy. So in the interim, what's happening in what I refer to as, the heartland or the breadbasket here in this amazing, authentic region, right? And we're going to run from central western Pennsylvania to southern Michigan, north of the Kentucky border, and
up into New York a little bit.
Up into New York a little bit, right?
Yep.
And so this is what I'm referring to as this space. And what was happening here was
farmers had broken Jeeps.
Farmers had broken Jeeps.
They were rusting away. They were tools. You were using them for snow plowing, that kind of stuff. And your kids would steal them and go run through the farmer's field once in a while.
Yikes, I feel that. So we needed fiberglass bodies. We needed repair parts.
Yes.
And this
leaf springs were breaking.
100%.
Motor stuffs needed fixed. I blew the transfer case out.
And that's not even to talk about the folks who wanted to race them and use them as performance-driven vehicles and have fun with them as far as trail riding and other competitive pursuits. Because ultimately, it's really important to note, while there was a group of people who were organized trail riding in the Southwest, organized trail riding in the Midwest to Northeast was not as prevalent. Here, we were doing more competitive pursuits, sand drags, hill climbs, timed obstacle courses,
I think it's just
stuff
the
like that.
demographic. I mean, out in California, you needed to get out into the desert or out into the back 40 a little bit, but it didn't rust away.
No.
It hung around a little longer. Your buddy with the hot rods was telling you to stuff a V8 in there and that kind of stuff. That all happened as the 4 cylinders died. But the Jeeps didn't disappear. Here, it was like a battle of the fittest kind of scenario. My Jeep's falling apart around me. I have to repair it, and I have to modify it to keep it repaired.
Right.
And I just have to keep it working. Out there, I think it became a toy far easier because it's like, well, I kind of don't need this thing.
Yeah.
We're here. If we didn't have our Jeep running and the lot wasn't plowed, we didn't eat.
Sure.
You didn't go get your bread. You didn't get your milk, that kind of stuff. Your shop could not open. Your business could not function. It was very necessary.
There was need necessary, and I'm going to circle back to the competitive piece. It's competition. It's necessary for me to build this, right?
Yes.
So what ends up happening is there's a number of clubs and local little off-road shops that support the endeavors of a few big ones, right?
Yes.
Just to interrupt real quick. Good morning, Darla.
Morning. And we end up having a number of businesses pop up right in eastern Pennsylvania, eastern Ohio, western Pennsylvania. And then we have the formation of a 4-wheel drive hardware, which obviously was working hand in hand with Kentrol, who was doing Bronco bodies at the time.
Yep.
and 4-wheel drive hardware is largely doing Jeep bodies at the time.
Speaking of four-wheel parts and stuff too, Chuck is in the comments just calling him out, so I'm going to read that.
Okay.
I used to work security for the Columbia four-wheel parts jamboree back in the day. Unrelated, you guys re-geared my Jeep because four-wheel parts was crazy expensive, and also asked me if my Rubicon had lockers.
Yep.
Perfect. So what ends up happening? And we need to kind of get to the meat and potatoes, is that Tom dies, the owner of that particular business, and 4-wheel parts, which again, George Adler, not Greg Adler, because Greg.
So Greg took over the company after he retired in 2005. So this was like the first move of his son.
Okay, there we go. Thank you for
But
I
it's
was
important to note at that point they didn't own it; they were running it.
correct, and that's what I was about. I want to make sure that I clarify, because while I am here to delicately walk within the industry, because I have tremendous respect for many businesses that we work with,
Yeah.
and I do authentically want to get along as a big off-road family, there are aspects that are systemically constraining our brands and businesses, and most specifically when we start to do what I call the race to the bottom, right? And so there was a lot of brands that are racing to the bottom. What ends up happening in 98 is that 4-wheel parts, with their under 10 stores or so, understand that they are primed to do something that other people aren't doing. They're prepared to put large-scale off-road shops in all of your major urban centers across the country
And sell their products.
and sell their house products,
Yes.
right? And that's important to this conversation, to say that they will make more money if they sell you what they want to sell versus what you actually need.
It's the Walmart model.
It is the Walmart model, because we're seeing that explode across the country in the 80s and 90s.
Because suddenly now, Dawn dish soap has to go with Great Value, whatever Walmart's brand is, because you're going to go there and it's $1 cheaper.
Right,
So you're going to buy Walmart's house brand
right.
because of financial.
Financially, it's
and
incentivizing
it's the
you, right?
Same thing.
No doubt. So ultimately, what happens is that they, despite having ProComp, despite having their under 10 retail stores, they're not relevant in the Jeep market. That's just flat out what's happening. They are a truck outfitter.
Yeah. They started out with Jeeps. That's important to note, but
They
they
did.
kind of lost.
But they lost relevancy.
Yeah.
And I don't have quite understand where or why that happened, but their pursuits,
Probably in that 10 years.
probably in that 10 years, their pursuits take them into Nerf bars and tonneau covers and bed liners
Yes.
and truck mats and
Honestly,
clearance lights.
I honestly think, this is just my opinion, I think it was a lot of going into the lights because that was their first endeavor. And what did you do in the 80s was you put a bar on your half-ton pick 'em up truck.
Yep.
And you put lights all across it, and then you put like 15 lights on the front bumper.
Absolutely, I did.
And I don't think Jeeps were doing that as much.
As much. I would.
'Cause you had a top in the way, you had other stuff. It was still, I needed that to go plow the snow, and Grandpa's yelling at me for putting accessories on there and it's gonna kill the battery and I can't plow snow.
Yes.
What the heck are you doing?
Yes. So they needed to
Kind of hit the reset button.
they needed an inroad into this niche market that's a family, the Jeep family,
And
right?
Not only that, they're a West Coast business,
100%.
and they didn't really have a good foothold up in our local area. They tried in Florida. That was kind of their first little tippy toes in the sand kind of
Right.
scenario, literally.
Yes. I
But
see what you did there.
Yeah.
I see you.
I have a plan sometimes. But anyway, this was an easy way for them to come up into our
into this
region.
breadbasket, right?
Yeah.
Where we had some manufacturers, we had some dedicated clubs, we had some need for these parts, right?
Yep.
So here's what happens.
And they were doing some manufacturing here as well, so it was very easy to kind of get into that.
Correct. So what ends up happening is I would argue we have one of our first big mergers and acquisitions, right? And for those at the time, I would love to know what the Adler family felt. I'd love to know what Compton felt. But realistically, there's a lot of people local to the area who would consider that to be a hostile takeover.
Yeah.
They came in, they changed a bunch of policies, and it started off from 06 basically through the early teens of the 2000s to be a kind of a contentious relationship of a West Coast to the heartland of the off-road industry.
And really, you wouldn't notice 100% like we did, because we did business with them through that takeover. We saw what the shop was, real personal, real down to earth. Jeepers in behind the counter. You had
I started going in the 90s.
Yeah,
right?
You had a catalog you go through. You had spare parts. It was in there. You could, that was fine. They had the scratched in area. It was really good for the little budget minded, which at that age I was me.
Oh yeah.
And then we saw it become very watered down.
Right.
Very transactional. Very like going and getting a cheeseburger scenario.
Yeah. So this is where our industry marks this. Now it's interesting to say that I believe starts a stone rolling downhill gathering moss.
Yes.
And then as we progress into that 2007, because that merger, you're talking about merger acquisition, realistically, I would tell you that it was in the works prior, that there was that 4WD was trying their best. There was a little bit of floundering just based in, Tom's absence. And then,
well, he was sick before he passed, so
correct.
I can only imagine.
Correct. And then the actual acquisition, they move forward. This is one of those times where a investment firm takes an interest in the off-road industry.
Yep.
I want to move this along because obviously this is a lot of history, a lot of contextualization. What ends up happening that JK Wrangler comes out, now the industry is on fire,
yeah.
right?
Right place, right time scenario.
And what ends up happening is more and more businesses start taking notice. Now, realistically, from our standpoint, as people attending SEMA at the time, I would tell you as a purveyor starting in the 90s of the aftermarket, automotive aftermarket, I felt like I was late to the game.
Yeah.
The reality is, I founded SFJ in arguably 2006 in a hobby capacity. We hit the mark, right? And I can say that authentically right now to say that kind of that right time, right place, because quite frankly, I had no business getting to the point where we're at. I had no money. I had no background in it. I have no acquisition. I have no backers, right?
Yep.
We were just individuals who were passionate and grinding, and we saw some models that were succeeding and some models that were failing.
Yep.
What ends up happening is we're out at SEMA, and the off-road industry, as big as SEMA is, watch the video. I explain, just the massive sprawling space of it. The automotive industry still considers the four-wheel drives derelict, and shoves us off into this far corner that's not traversed by many, because quite frankly they don't even want to put up with the four-wheel drive guys. Do you know where the four-wheel drive guys are, and the Battle of the Builders and the Overland guys? Right out front now.
Yep.
That's where we're at now, right? But that's not where we were even just 7-8 years ago.
Yep.
And why that is because these investment firms are recognizing the buying potential of our community.
Yep.
And the challenge is, as some of these smaller independent producers who were founded under really good means, right? They really were trying to make a high quality product that made a difference in the market.
Yep.
I genuinely believe that, right?
Yep.
They might have started in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, making great diff covers, making great bumpers, making great suspension lift kits.
Yep.
They were good USA made companies with incredible histories.
But life happens.
Life happens.
They get older.
They
things
get older.
change, sickness happens.
They can't meet market demand for their product line.
Get tired of fighting.
Price point is again this
The race
diff cover,
to the bottom.
the race to the bottom.
Yeah.
And we start, as global manufacturing has increased in tolerance, because of course there was parts available in the 90s from some of these import companies, but they just weren't good, right? They were crap.
Yep.
And
they still deal with some of that backlash to this day.
And that's exactly right. But we didn't have any other choice, and
kind of still don't sometimes.
We still don't sometimes. And so you bought it, which kept building this brand. Here's the thing, folks. And I was, like I said, I was there before, and I'm still here now. And when I thought the funniest thing was by 10, 11, 12, Rugged Ridge had rebranded themselves to the point that JK owners were proud that they had that on their vehicle.
Yeah.
And
That was a swear word when you had
I
had
mean,
an XJ
I got to
or
tell you,
YJ.
yeah, if you were in the market 5-10 years prior to that JK owner putting Rugged Ridge on their vehicle, we made fun of you.
Yeah.
That was not a good brand to have on your vehicle.
Yep.
Like, you were like, that was like you
Same
went
thing
flummy.
happened with Pro Comp. I remember that was just a cheap $100 bumper
Yeah.
that I could throw on the Jeep because it had a wrecked front bumper, and it was like, well, it's $100. Why not?
Yeah.
I don't expect much out of it.
Right.
That's fine. Suddenly, Pro Comp's tires, wheels, lift kit, everything's on a JK. That, at that time is 3 times more than what my
And
Jeep I'm
Smittybilt.
driving.
And Smittybilt.
And
and-
people are like, I'm proud of this. I got this. I'm like, what?
Right.
I
So-
bought it because it was cheap.
Understand that in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, so Smittybilt was actually a good quality brand and business that came up out of all of these other great come up stories.
Yep.
Rubicon Express in 2004, if you had a Rubicon Express, you were a high roller. Your lift kit was premium. It was made by the best people, wheeled in the harshest terrains, all
Yep.
that kind of stuff.
Yep. Poison Spider.
Poison Spider, well, sort of. All of these companies, because Poison Spider ends up declaring bankruptcy, and Larry Anderson brings it back from the dead out of the ashes of a portfolio that he purchased out of the Baja scene. But that's a different story for a different day.
Yeah.
It becomes a huge brand under the JK market. The funny thing is the influence of Four Wheel Parts and their house brands, because now all of a sudden you had these good brands that then Four Wheel Parts took, shipped over into global markets, produced overseas, imported them back over, but marketed them in such a way that made them look like the best thing since sliced bread.
Yep.
Okay? That happened, and Four Wheel Parts paved the way for that process. I mean, at a point in time, and we still don't, do a ton of Smittybilt. I think that the market is now recognizing Smittybilt is not what it was. Rubicon Express, not what it was. Pro Comp, not what it was.
Yep.
All of these brands, are not
They've
what
rode
Four
them
Wheel.
into the sunset.
They've rode them into the sunset. So what ends up happening is that there's basically the merger and acquisitions have getting more finite and finite
We're
and
getting
finite.
down to 4 players, 5-ish players, and keep consolidating.
They keep consolidating, keep
And
consolidating.
each time
out.
that happens, the bankroll gets bigger and bigger, and the disconnection from the original source of the money to the products happens more and more.
Right. And these are largely publicly traded companies at this point. So that means that they are shareholder driven. So
Which means
if
it's all about that bottom dollar.
it is all about the bottom dollar, the metric of the measurement of money, right?
Yeah.
Quality
I'm
goes
not-
down, profit goes up.
Right. And
Yes.
I'm not at all saying that this is because I am a business owner. I believe in capitalism. I believe in, democratic capitalism. I'm here for it. I understand that. But when the money and the delivery of the product get further and further away from each other,
Yeah.
that is then the challenge to be aware of. Now, I'm really happy with the market where it's at because I actually think there's a pretty healthy balance of enthusiast-driven businesses,
Yep.
but there is a large swath of businesses that are owned by basically 3 holding companies.
Yep.
It's also important to note that one of the largest acquisition mergers, Rip, Dip, and Strips, happened just not even quite a year ago. But a company that we work with confidently called Wheel Pros went in with some Blackwater money,
Yeah.
and which is a huge global investment firm.
They started out just doing real estate investments, and now at this point, they're investing in everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
And they went ahead and they did a bunch of acquisitions to set Wheel Pros up on a trajectory that will put them into maybe the next 10, 15 years of dominance within the off-road industry.
Mhm.
They, interestingly enough, were not largely present at SEMA. They did so in kind of a coded nature. They allowed a number of those brands to self-identify. Hoonigan, following the death of Ken Block, was actually purchased by Wheel Pros. Terraflex was purchased by Wheel Pros. It's important for you to understand right here and right now, Terraflex is not the brand that it once was. That is the reality of the situation.
And if you watched the SEMA video, there was a Jeep that disappointed Neil when he realized what was on it.
It was entirely Terraflex branded from the undercarriage up. Does it have the potential to produce good quality products? Sure. So does Smittybilt and Rubicon Express. That doesn't mean that they were the brands that they once were.
Yeah,
and that's the important point
all
of
that
clarification.
marketing that you use when you purchase that product, and you go, well, I remember this from 15 years ago, 20 years ago. That's a different company at this point.
It's a different company.
Joe's feeling that comment. He
I
says,
know.
no kidding.
I know. I'm sorry, Joe, but this is the reality of the situation. And the more that we talk about it, the more we're aware of it. Because actually, we have a great customer and great friend of the business named Kevin. And Kevin's big thing is like, you can exist as a brand, but do what you say you're going to do. Right? So if you tell me that you're going to be a good quality, Terraflex is going to make an axle, Core 44, which was a brand owned by 4-Wheel Parts, is going to make an axle, then build a good quality axle.
Yeah.
I don't care if you built it in China, in Mexico, or in the States.
Just stand behind it.
Stand behind it.
Yep.
But
we've noticed a trend where they kind of get in and out of it as quickly as they get, they get out of it as soon as they get into it. So if you have like 3 to 5 years for that product to
they're throwing
exist.
it against the wall and they see if it sticks.
And so we ran into that on a couple builds ago, trying to transplant a motor into a Jeep, and there was all these parts produced, and that was kind of the go-to parts. And we went to order them, and suddenly they didn't exist.
And nobody who had actually engineered the parts was employed there anymore.
Yep.
Right, which was a challenge of ours. So the thing is, we're not here to disrespect the actions of any of these bigger businesses, but just call to attention the fact that Real Truck owns, basically a handful of the lines, and I'm trying to think of, because it was Lund at one point in time. The acquisitions have happened so fast and in such
really
different
hard
ways.
to keep track of it.
It's actually very hard.
Overland is another one that's purchasing a bunch.
OVS is doing
Yep.
Now, I actually would tell you, based on knowing the leadership at OVS, they're somebody to watch at this point, because they were influential in the quality creation of Smittybilt. This is before this was still as Smittybilt was being. It went from a USA manufactured, it went to global production, but it still rose the ranks of a good quality brand before it kind of fell off the good graces of the portfolio of 4-Wheel Parts, which is important to note, was also ripped apart. Their wholesale division was sold to a different distribution company. The rights for their website was sold to Wheel Pros. Wheel Pros doesn't want individual shops, so the shops retained had to change their name, and they are still part of the Compton, California investment firm. I think they're called Total Off-Road at this point. And that is the former shadow of 4-Wheel Parts installation facilities, is now this Total Off-Road. And so that 4-Wheel Parts was actually thrown to the winds in 3 different ways. And then Wheel Pros realistically didn't care about Rubicon Express or ProComp. ProComp has lacked identity for years, realistically.
Yep.
Wheel Pros wanted Terraflex to be their flagship. So they're offering Terraflex and ReadyLift as their 2 primary suspension manufacturers. What is valuable to this conversation is the fact that we encourage you to do your homework, to research your brands, not riding on the laurels of what they once were, but the technology and the investment that they're continuing to produce in the market. Again, not to say that these companies are not capable of good works within our community, but to reference Kevin, then do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
So the
and
business,
be there
the big
when
business.
I need your services, and I personally feel like that's not where a lot of these places are at. They may not be the business they are now in 5 years.
And they might not be, but they also might be. And so
Yeah.
I'm not looking to cast any stones in glass houses. It's just the idea of the business of big business. It was shared with me via a couple people. A resounding commentary that came out of SEMA 2023 was, wow, look how many brands have been bought up as part of financial portfolio packages versus, hey, they want to build a really gnarly bumper.
And the part that's really amazing to me is, Four Wheel Parts was one of the big players, and the fact that they got bought out and got dissected apart is kind of a big culture shock because, three years ago we would have said they were one of the big boys, and a bigger boy came up and just took them apart.
That is
three bigger boys. They just devoured. They took chunks.
Yeah. I think
It's like
that's a great place to end on because that is a resounding, it kind of gave me chills because as a purveyor of the last 30 years of the aftermarket industry, it's a wild ride, but that's exactly, we thought we had a behemoth, a Goliath that couldn't be taken down. And like you said, it actually
bigger one just came in.
Bigger one just came in and grabbed.
It was like it got swarmed by sharks, and they each took their own chunk.
And as enthusiasts in the industry, and I want businesses to appropriately continue to grow. That is the basis of our democratic capitalism, is continue to grow responsibly within our society, right? And so that's our objective as enthusiasts, community members, and automotive consumers, is to hold these businesses accountable for doing producing the products they claim they're going to, and not blindly trusting in what the brand once was.
And you as a consumer kind of steer that ship.
No doubt. All right, folks, this has been a good wild ride. I think we're done for the day. We're going to conclude it. We got Jeeps to build. We got a lot of life to happen. Here's what's really interesting. We have the Christmas parade coming up on Black Friday. We encourage you to join us. We're looking to make this a sizable impact. The community has reached out to us. They are really enjoying the Jeeps in our little local community. So we want for you to join us.
What's our goal this year for Jeeps?
Our goal is 60. Our
60
goal is 60, which would be make this the biggest gathering of Jeeps for the Christmas parade, or any parade that we've hosted so far. We've always just kind of approached it as kind of this a laissez-faire. Hey, come and it's going to be fun. This year we're kind of trying to push it a little bit. We've invited all of the local clubs. I've tried to do so personally. We've also invited a number of the local 4x4 businesses. So if you're just kind of ever dip in or out with us, we've actually invited other off-road businesses kind of close to our proximity to join us this year, to give back to our off-road community, to try and kind of create a cohesive nature, to bring all of these people together to make the community happy with our vehicles. So that is happening. Additionally, there will not be a live podcast next week.
We do intend to release an episode, though, pre-recorded, and that will be episode 99, leaving us on break for Thanksgiving.
Right.
Coming back to episode 100.
Number 100. Thank you so much for allowing us to get to that point, folks, and making us one of the fastest growing automotive podcasts in the world. That is such a cool thing to say, folks, but thanks to you, we have achieved that level of recognition. So episode 100 will be happening soon, the 1st of December, which will be kicking off the 12 days of Jeepmas, which you will not want to miss.
Real quick, before we get too far off of it, selfishly, the other reason we want to come to the parade is now we have Dos Scots with SFJ. Both have new Jeeps, and they're both going to be at the parade. And you definitely want to come see that.
Listen to him. Listen to him.
Wow.
I was actually approached as well. I maybe have another iron in the fire for the future. I don't know if it'll happen for this parade, but an iron in the fire. Somebody reached out, recognized what's happening here, and wants to get involved. So I'm very excited about a kind of a informal reach out that happened over the weekend as well. Busy weekend, like I said, for all of us. So now it's time to make this happen.
Is giving you high fives on that one.
That's right.
Scots unite.
Until then, Jeep family, Jeep on.
Jeep on.
Jeep on.